successful for most people. But any other questions?
When you were talking about the liquid life beings, is the light we talk about our God? Is that their God too? Or so we're all part.
The light came into play. She still went through a light. And she said there was candles everywhere, very beautiful, very loving. But their perception of what it was like for that spirit was different, though, she said, because she was shown how we're experimented in a way in certain situations for learning purposes. Like we're put into certain situations for our own benefit. And why she was put into a car accident, I don't know, and I don't think she did either. But when she described these beings, and they're very tall, they were very, very tall. They were like 7, 8 feet tall, she said, but that liquid kind of a body, she said she couldn't relate. But yet they communicated with her, knew her name, knew stuff about her and everything. But then told her about the car accident. They knew it was coming and they were waiting for her and all that. But for her, I don't know but that's what I wonder too.
I believe it was her soul.
Yeah, I don't know.
Creating these.
Oh,
I believe that it was in this liquid lady.
Yeah.
I believe that was her soul saying, this is what's really going to get her attention. Because the other thing is a lot of us, when we're in the near-death experience, we're afraid we're going to go back and we're not going to remember it all. And the interesting thing about when you mentioned your near-death experience, a lot of people that have had them recently, what you need to understand is the near-death experience is a gift that keeps on giving. And as time goes by, you're going to keep remembering even more and more of what you were told while you were out of body. Because I have, at the age of 51, I recall so much now compared to what I was willing to talk about when I was 7 years old, that my parents are sometimes like, you sure you're not making this up? Because it seems to build upon itself over the years. And it's like it absolutely does, because the more I'm able to accept it, then the more I'm able to work with that information. And that goes back to the fact that we can't experience something that we don't believe in. And if you don't believe in something, like, past lives or future lives, then of course, you can't get all the benefits that you get when you do believe in those and you get the information. Did somebody over here have a question earlier?
I wanted to give some feedback to Susan and say I am so very glad that you have been able to release guilt about not wanting to come back. I had a drowning experience when I was 4, and you're so right. It's absolutely wonderful. It's complete peace, complete joy. It's free of all fear, all pain, anything unpleasant. When I was out of my body, that's where I was, just floating above, very happy, very content, and the hard part was coming back. I heard my mother screaming, "Where is she?" I saw them pull me out of the pool, and I'm like, why are they so excited? I'm having fun. I'm fine. Yeah. And then they took me out of the pool, and that was the horrible part, coming back. Yeah, throwing up, your sinuses, this and that. So it's just so normal that you wanted to stay in that wonderful place. And my Reiki teacher had the same thing too, that he had been over there a few times, and he kept saying, it's just so much nicer over there. And he had a lot of health problems, but I'm really, really happy for you that you made it past that. Thank you.
Have either of you two read or listened to the book Conversations with God? And if so, what do you think?
Neil Donald Walsh. When I first heard about that book, I was like, the ego, the whatever. And because I do my own journaling, and I know that it's my own higher self that I'm talking to. But one day my own higher self said, who am I? And I'm like, well, you're my soul. And she's like, and what am I made of? Light. All right, so when you're talking to me, you're talking to? And I'm like, the light. She's like, right, I am your piece of the light, but really when you're getting information from me, you are talking to God. So what Neil Donald Walsh did was and it's very similar to what the journals look like of all the near-death experiencers, is he was connecting to his own higher self, which is a piece of the light. And so it took me a while to accept that yes, he is having conversations with God. But I just thought it'd be more honest, if you will, to say that he was having that conversation with his soul, which is a piece of the light. But really, it is just semantics, isn't it? You know. So yes, yeah. Were you familiar with him? Know that book? You know what? It is called Conversations with God. Is the first one, and I think he's got 2 that came out after that or something. And you know what? It's so funny because even though I was so offended when I first heard about that, it's his books that have opened people up to the stories that I tell, so it's helped tremendously. So I've learned, you know what? And when I was little, I did think that I was going to grow up and that this was my agenda. I'm the only one that ever got to say, you know, and then as I grew up and of course became a nurse, I discovered that this is really a very run-of-the-mill experience for people who have been clinically dead. We all report a very, very similar situation. So, other questions? Back here. Let's see how far this goes.
I have 3 related questions, and actually it's almost on the last point you made. My question is there sort of a static initial pool of souls, or are souls being created, you know, continuously? That's the first question. The second one is, if there is a static or a starting pool of souls, when did that happen and where do they come from? And the third question is, when do souls die?
Okay, I'm going to try to remember those in order, and then I'm going to hand it over to Susan. A soul cannot die. Your piece of light is always going to exist no matter what. My personal belief and what I was taught when I was up there is that all of the souls began at the same time, wherever this light came from. And your guess is as good as mine, because one thing that we all ask is, where did the light come from? And that I don't have an answer for. But so your soul cannot die. What was the second question? So I want to talk about the difference between, say, an old soul and a young soul, though, or a new soul. You know, I love it when people walk up to me after I do a presentation like this and like, you are such an old soul. And it's like, actually, I'm not. Remember the part of my story where I told you I died so many times as a small child? It means I didn't experience, you know, adulthood very many times. This is like the 4th time I've made it to adulthood. So what I consider a young soul is somebody who hasn't had a lot of experience in the physical. And the people who we consider really wise in, you know, in our physical world are people who have had many, many lifetimes and have learned a great deal. And a young soul is somebody like me who hasn't had that many lifetimes that reached adulthood. So, you know, but I do believe that we all began at the same time. And I don't believe that like more are being born now. I think that it's a finite, well, no. As soon as I started to say it's finite, something upstairs said, no, Lori, it's infinite. So does that, I guess if it's infinite, then I'm just trying to figure out how to put this in human terms. Because the way we get our information is through energy. At the beginning of time, there was a light. That light decided to divide into many, many different pieces of light, and that became the individual souls that come down here, and that's why we're separate. But in a sense, that's why, you know, right now we're on this thing about oneness, and the Christ consciousness is coming onto this planet. It's really just, Jesus was trying to tell us that everybody can do what he did, that he wasn't special, that yes, he was the child of God, but so are all the rest of us, equally, you know. So that's my take on the soul age thing. I'll let Susan address it.
So I just know that once I was there, because I was given information sort of like what I say is, if you think of a computer and the little flash drives that go in there into the computer, that's sort of how it felt with the information. And what I know from being there, our souls don't die. I don't know about the new ones and all that, because I wondered that myself. But like coming off from the light and all that, I still wonder, but do we ever stop or end or something? But no, we don't. No, it's continuous.
That's another thing that comes up all the time. One of the questions is, I used to go to Sylvia Brown's talks, of course, because she was like the premier in my line of work. And I don't know. I started to blank once I got up here, though, about the whatever I was gonna. Oh, yeah. So sometimes she was on a cruise once, and she said to people, "This is your last lifetime. This is your last lifetime." And I was sitting there going, "What?" Even people like me who resist the physical and don't love it down here, eventually we all end up coming back because there's somebody that's drawing us back. There's some soul that we love that decided to come down into the physical, and that we've got to come down and be with. So I do believe strongly that that we never just stay up on a cloud and play a harp for eternity. That even those of us who resist the physical, that really you've got two choices. You can be incarnated in a physical and be learning that way, or you're in the in-between, which is what I do call heaven, because it's so not quite what the Baptist had described. So I just like to call it the other side, or the in-between. When I'm in the in-between, my job is to work, guess where? The communications area. So when I'm dead, what my soul does is works with other psychics or channels and says, tell them this, tell them that, this is what, okay, here's what's going on, you know? And so that's who I work with sometimes when I'm doing my work. But again, if I do a reading or a consultation with somebody, I want to get advice from their soul. If their dead parent is over there and wants to chime in, that's fine. But just like in physical life, your dead parent might have an opinion that's not necessarily what's best for you. So I'll tell them, this is what your dead parent has to say, but this is what your soul has to say. And if I were you, I'd go with the soul. So, yeah. Anybody else?
I heard you just say that after December 2012, the karmic cycle is abrogated. What replaces it, if you have any insight?
Forgiveness. Where we're just not going to make another soul pay for what they did to us. And so what replaces it really is just, you know, accepting that we learned something from that, and that for all things a reason, because that's one of the first universal truths. And so, yeah, I feel like we're just, once we go back up there and say, for example, I mean, you know, in this lifetime, it was my boss that had accused me of a crime that I had not done with this database. I could cross over and say, you know, I want her to pay for that in her next lifetime. I think that, you know, she should experience that horrendous thing.
Yeah, the follow-on question is, are you the causative agent? Are you the causative agent of karma? I mean, my impression, my understanding is that there's a higher law that operates. It's not our choice. Payback is, if you will, automatic.
The individual who has been harmed is the causative agent of the negative karma for somebody else. But at a certain point, we started to realize that it was becoming a vicious cycle. That, you know, I did it to the uncle, then my boss does it to me, so then I cross over and then I want to do it to my boss. You know, it gets to a point where it's pointless, and then we've all kind of experienced that. When we come into a physical lifetime, each lifetime already has its main lessons pre-written and set out there for you. And luckily, you know, like as far as this thing about, in my case, not just for my person, but for my soul deed, I will never accuse somebody of doing something that they did not do. I mean, an egregious crime, not only because I don't want it to happen to me again, but also because it's just the wrong thing to do. You know, it wasn't the thing to do. So, but yeah, I think that now people go up, they have their, when they're in their life review, instead of setting up what they want to happen to that person, a lot of times now, the life review, they're just saying, this is what I learned from it. And like in my case, it was horrible to be accused of egregious crimes, but it put me doing what I'm doing today, and now people love talking to me about what I have to talk about. They're not in a clinic setting looking at me saying, I just came in here to get my blood pressure taken and my orthopedic problem taken care of, and I do not want to talk to you about my cheating or whatever else is going on in my life. So, yeah, does that help you at all? Did that answer the question? Yeah, you know what, most of them are, but I do try to just at least hope that I answer the question. Anybody else? Rich.
I know you mentioned several things that were kind of planned in our lifetime. Did you get any sense of things like that we come into the body with, like childhood diabetes or something like that, that we had no responsibility for?
All of your medical issues, and this came in my nursing career, all of your medical issues are something that resets you in some way or another. So when I was younger and we realized that I didn't have hearing in the right side of my ear, well, my soul planned that because they wanted me to listen to the folks upstairs, and that way it was like that ear is open for them, this ear is open for the other. Childhood diabetes. The endocrine system is the system of our physical body that gives us our intuition. So, generally, people who have thyroid problems, diabetes, anything going on with their pituitary, those are the people who are going to be your psychics, okay? Because generally, anybody who has my ability, your physical body still has to have a way to open that door for you. So the endocrine system is that door. So a childhood diabetic is somebody who's coming in with extra intuition, and they don't know that they have extra intuition because, again, whatever we're born with, we assume is what everybody has, right? And then it turns out as we grow older, we realize not so much. Because when I was younger and I became a psychic or I got more intuitive in my near-death experience, I thought everybody operated the way I did. Until in my early 20s, it dawned on me that not everybody's like hearing people's thoughts or knowing somebody's future. And so, yeah, did that answer that? Okay. I don't want to hog it, so you can grab this like I do if you have an answer to add. Okay.
When you talked about coming back each time to learn, I understand you saying there's not a time that we will not be reincarnated, but yet the fella or the person you talked to that was on the, was it you or the wagon, you know, Abe? Abe, yeah, she's on the wagon. Abe, to me, is he not maybe a soul that is closer to God? I don't know. I'm just saying, is there a time that you have another job?
I could tell when I first got there and went through that light, I mean, it was like from point A to point B immediately through that light. Gabe was there waiting for me. I didn't come, you know how when you're dreaming and all these things just sort of happen as you're dreaming? It wasn't like that. He was there waiting for me. In that moment, that was his purpose, was to meet me crossing over and to help me. And without him saying who he was to me, because at that point I was only 20, I didn't know of anybody who had died. Other than, you know, when I was 5 years old, there was an uncle I never knew kind of thing. But I could tell was my guide. I mean, he was there for me to help me specifically. It's not like he's out there just waiting on a line of people. I knew it was just me. And he was there to help me, so I call him my guide. And if he was something else, like, I know that St. Francis and all that, and it's possible because his name was Gabe. St. Gabriel, I don't know. But he was very, very strong. He was very important. He was very kind, very loving, but also I knew that he had this incredible power. He was somehow important. I knew that and I could feel it. And it's weird how when you get there, you feel things you just don't feel here. Your intuition opens up and you see and feel things you just don't hear. And like Lori said, we all have that third eye. And the ability to do it here, we just kind of, I don't think we just really know how here. I don't know. But from coming back from there, everything changed. All of a sudden, I'm aware of things I wasn't aware of before, and I hear these people and see these people, and I can tell just by being around someone sometimes or talking to them that they have bad intentions or they're the most loving person I've met in a long time, and I can feel it inside. And there's some people that will make me sick to my stomach. So when you come back from there, knowing that this man Gabe is looking out for me and I'll see him again, it's more comfortable. I'm not, like Laura said, I'm not afraid to die. I could care less, you know. And I'll tell my family, and I always have to say I'm kidding, but I'm like, okay, I get to get hit by a bus today. Please, leave me alone. Do not ever resurrect me. I have a DNR. Leave me alone. I know where I'm going. Leave me alone. You know, so it's a joke in my family, but. Mine? Yeah, he was, I'm pretty sure, a guide. I got the feeling that because I know he was there to take care of me in that moment. He was waiting for me. And I don't know if he was yeah, for me, it happened for me 33 years ago. But to explain it, I just started doing it recently to explain it. Yeah, but, hold on. Did he?
I'm curious, you said that you had a DNR.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like cheating?
Nope.
Wait a minute, you said you had
No. It's dying naturally. It means that do not resuscitate. That means I get no, cheating is gun head, yeah, poison. Yeah. No, DNR is not cheating. That just means I know where, you know. That's cheating. That's cheating, yeah. And he doesn't say suicide. They don't see that. They just say no cheating. And I've heard someone else said that they were told no cheating. So,
You know, one thing that's really important too is that when the reason that a near-death experiencer says, I don't want to go back, is that one of the things that we're also very aware of up there is that we're still going to be connected to everybody that we love down here. When people call me in my work and they're saying, tell my dead mother this, tell my dead mother that, I'm like, your dead mother can hear everything that you want to tell her. You don't need me to translate that. So that's one reason that people who have a near-death experience are not too concerned. Even if we have children, we're still going to get to know what those children are doing and how they're doing and how they turn out. But the problem is that when you're in that space upstairs, if your children are not highly intuitive like I am, or like, you know, Susan is, or like a lot of people are, then the children can't hear you anymore. So my nephew, who did die in April, he's got 2 sons. One is 18 months and one is just born. But he said it's so heartbreaking to try to talk to his son still, and sometimes his son does see him because he's so little. But as that son gets older, he's going to start thinking that his dad's just a figment of his imagination, and that's really sad. So it is hard to be ignored when you're up there and you're not treated like you are in the physical, where people respond to you and they know you're there and they know what you're saying. But we up there on the other side, we know exactly what's going on. In fact, I joke with my family when I came back, I said, I know you better than you know you now. Because when you're up there, you really have that information, that all knowledge. So who else has a question? Are we running?
Okay, let's begin to wrap it up, but if we could take 2 more questions, that would be great. Yes.
I've got so many. Do you believe that, you know, you hear these people on Oprah or whatever say thoughts become things? You both believe that? So is humanity now, is everyone thinking such awful thoughts that's making the world so in such turmoil?
Like she's saying, we're just in a shift right now where we're trying to bring more of the heaven to earth, okay? So, you know what's funny is on Facebook, some people are just like, I just want peace on earth. You know, and it's like, you know what I always say to that every time in the thread? There is peace on earth. It's just not everywhere at this time. You know, because we got to remember how much good there is while we're focusing on the bad. The problem with mass communication that we have now is that now we're aware of the fact that the people in Orlando had what happened that one night where the guy went into the bar and shot everybody up. Back in the day, we didn't ever hear about things that happened before the internet and before you even newspapers and stuff like that. So honestly, one of my big messages is, guess what? The world is not worse today than it's ever been. It's not. It may feel like it in your experience, but in all honesty, this planet is a much easier place to live than it was eons ago when I was an indigenous cultured person, because I always joke that I have a lot of indigenous cultured past lives or Native American and Hispanic or whatever, and this is the first lifetime that I've really come back as a WASP, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and I'm just an infiltrate, because I also still support like what Native Americans or indigenous cultures have, you know, to say or whatever. But
the other thing I noticed too, because that's a good question, is that I realized maybe about when I started telling my story 15 years after it happened, I realized more and more people are coming out, and I think like what I was told, tell people what happened, and we're supposed to, every single one that I know of was told to tell their story to other people, pass along the information, and I think it's because of the world being bad, and to make people aware that it really is going to happen after you pass away from this world and you're going to go someplace else. And yes, you do have to account for what you do when you go through your life review. You're going to have to feel that, and I think it gives you more sense of conscience and right and wrong and all that yes, there can be consequences, but I think that's why so many of us come back and more people are having the NDEs. Also, you know, medical has come a long way, technology is higher and all that, so more and more people, but more and more people are writing a book about it, talking about it and stuff, and not being afraid. Like for me, when they told me, you know, when Gabe said I have to tell this to other people, I was like, oh hell no, you think I'm crazy? I'm not telling anybody about this. And then, you know, because of my shame, because I would love my children. But now so many people, you know, and I'm thinking that's to let everybody know what's going on, to make sure. Yeah. Oh.
The part this is really kind of humbling. I don't know how to explain this. I think it's maybe partly my personality and partly the years I was growing up, in which we didn't walk around talking about our innermost thoughts to anybody who would happen to ask. That's been the most challenging for me the last year, is total strangers have come up to me. One at the Sedona seminar was a woman from the New Zealand Maori tribe. She and I were like this, as if we'd known each other forever. But that was only one of startling. There's a doctor who I met in doing a procedure, and he kept saying, "I know you know things." And
The lights on, that's what I call it, yeah.
and when people you don't know start saying it, you kind of go, whoa, you know, like, whoa, it's kind of like, it's sort of like, it's not like you don't want to participate. It's just more like, it's kind of like you wonder where they're coming from.
Right.
You're maybe a little cautious, which
Very personal.
it seems very personal. And he kept saying that to me over many times. Why is it you won't talk about this? Finally, my prayer group people said it's because he knows you know, which we know you know. So why don't you just tell him? Because he's so intuitive. He's putting it in.
Trying to open you up.
Yes, and I was
Welcome to the psychic closet.
right, and that's about it. so now and no and.
She needs my brochure.
And a lot of these people were so unlike me also. I have lots of brown people who I've just loved. They were so wonderful. But it was kind of startling to me to have total strangers saying this to me.
More and more. Oh, you're 40
Yes.
out.
Yes, yes, it will increase, Barb. So thank you all so much for taking the time and learning about this. Just being in the presence of near-death experiencers, you are getting a shot of light, much bigger shot of light than normal, believe it or not. That's why I like to hang out with near-death experienced people. And that's why I have Denver Near-Death Studies. I have a meetup. We meet the second Sunday of each month at the Greenwood Village City Hall. Denver Near-Death Studies is educational to help educate you about these types of phenomena. We meet the second Sunday of each month at 1:30 p.m. for a couple of hours at the Greenwood Village City Hall. It's really nice digs, a very posh facility, and very comfortable. We have a big screen where I show educational documentary films as well as professional presentations, and then the now and then near-death experiencer who's willing to speak about their death.